recently released a running short film here on the channel that you should check out if you haven't already, and now I want to share with you the whole process. This is how I went from pre-production to filming to post-production to the final video. This was a big learning experience for me, and I hope you can take away some important lessons I also learned so you can take the steps needed to make your own films. Here's some backstory on coming up with this short film. At the beginning of the summer, I knew I wanted to create a short film that showcases my skills and how I've improved over the past year. I feel like my previous work doesn't show what I am capable of creating, and I still feel like there are more ways I can push myself in my work. But again, with the limited resources I had and the tight schedule for filming, I'm very happy with how this turned out. I would have tried creating this short film sooner, but throughout the summer, the only lens I owned just broke down on me and I had to get it replaced, and that took all of summer to do. After all that, Joyce was willing to be the star of the short film, and I got to work. In pre-production, this is where you try to plan as much as you can to make the filming process easier on yourself, even if things don't go according to plan. I made a Google Doc to keep track of everything that goes into the planning, my ideas, the interview questions, the shot list, everything. Of course, there are other tools out there that might be better for pre-production, but I just went with a simple and free option. The first thing I did was start coming up with the interview questions to see where I wanted to take this short film. I knew she's a runner and she's a physical therapist, and if we had more time, I would have liked to combine these two sides of her within the short film, but from first talking with her, I knew we wouldn't have the time to dive into it all. So I decided to stick on the running side of her life to push my creativity, my camera skills, and to make something unique. At first, the questions were rather simple and randomly written down for brainstorming, as you can see. I know I would want more from them, so I built my final questions off of these and started to ask questions that focus more on giving us information like, why do you run, who got you into running or made you the athlete you are today, and questions that lean into our emotions like, what makes running special for you and what motivates you to keep running even on days you don't want to. I gave her the questions ahead of time so she would be more comfortable sharing what she was open to. During the pre-production, I'm also writing down any shot ideas I may have. I also went to different locations to see what exactly I could shoot and where. I filmed while location scouting, so when it came down to filming, it would make it easier for me to be like, oh yes, this spot, I wanted this look, and so on. To come up with shots, I looked to Shot Deck to find screen grabs of movies and try to recall things I've previously seen. I also try to search on YouTube for inspiration like running videos or advertisements on running, but I didn't really find much on there, but sometimes that can help too. Most of the shots just came from brainstorming and what I wanted as the vision for my short film. I also asked her about her routine so I can best show that within the short film. Some examples were of her making coffee, getting ready, warming up, prepping her watch, and listening to music. Things like that where she guides me and I just try to go in and make it look good. It's just like in my practice cinematography video where I'm making mundane everyday things look more interesting than they might actually be through composition, lighting, and color. Now this is when you would storyboard if it makes it easier for you to visualize, but I like to describe it enough through words where I wouldn't need to draw it out. But also, I'm not that good at drawing or storyboarding in that way, so make sure you do what's best for you to keep track. We also made sure to plan out our schedule so we knew we only had 3 mornings to shoot everything. The first was for the interview, the second for the first day of shooting outside, that would take up most of the video, and the third for the intro and bits of other shots to round up the video where it needed it. I came up with a list of locations and I wish we could have done more of them, but I shortened it to make the process easier for us considering the schedule. And with all the equipment needed for this film, if I added more locations without having the necessary help to move it all, it would have made the whole process a lot more difficult. Speaking of equipment, I used my trusty Sony a7 IV and my one and only lens, the 24-70mm f2.8 G Master version 1. Now of course I would love to invest in more lenses, but this definitely gets the job done. I also knew from the start I would need to use a gimbal, and this was the first time I used one in my work since shooting myself by myself a gimbal isn't needed. The gimbal I used supported my camera setup and it was the June Weeble 2. It's a bit older but it was solid and got the job done. I also knew I needed to practice with it so when it came time to shoot I wouldn't struggle and waste the time we had. I practiced some of the ideas I had for the intro, and you can see from the practice footage to the final video it was worth doing that so I had a better vision of it and less takes to do. In this stage, I also practiced the lighting setup I would use for the interview portion. There were many setups I tried, but the one that looked the best while using the smallest setup possible was with the Aperture Amaran 200D with the Lightdoll Mini 2 softbox. This helped increase the look of the natural light on her. I didn't want the light to feel sourcey, I just wanted to make sure it felt natural like it was window light. I also used a Nanlite paddle tube to bounce off the wall and increase the ambient lighting in the space. And lucky enough, she had a lamp on the opposite side that I used to give a bit of color contrast and fill in her shadows a bit, giving it a bit more of an interesting look. Remember, you want to shoot on the shadow side of your subject, and the strongest source of light is on the opposite side of your camera. And for recording all of the audio, I use the Sennheiser MKE 400 shotgun microphone. I'll get into the audio and sound design portion in the post-production process. But now let's get into the actual filming. So day 1 was the interview at her place so I could create the voiceover and dialogue based on what she shared. She had many great answers, but I couldn't use all of it in the final video, but it's better to have more than you needed than not enough to tell their story. With the lighting setup I mentioned in pre-production, here it is in camera turning them on one by one. By practicing the setup beforehand, I was able to quickly set up a nice look for the interview without bringing more gear than I needed. We filmed the interview portion twice and wrapped up for the day. I was able to cut down the interview into the first version of the voiceover and start to picture the order of the shots that I wanted for the final video. Fast forward 2 weeks for day 2, I had to wake up at 5 AM for sunrise to get the most out of the day. That day we filmed in Astoria Park from 6:45 AM to noon, just getting as much as we can with good variety and different actions so I can piece together the video using my shot list and her voiceover. I think the hardest part of filming on this day was just carrying and using the gimbal and trying to keep up with her running. Now I'm not the best yet when it comes to gimbal work, but with enough attempts I was really happy with the shots that we got, and I think they came out pretty dope. It was heavy and bulky and my back definitely started to hurt, but we pushed through and wrapped up before the light started to get too harsh. Again, Joyce made it super easy to just focus on what I have to do with framing and gimbal work. I really didn't need to give her much direction with filming. Day 3 was the following week and we started by filming early in the morning in Central Park. This is where I wanted to get the intro and the ending of the film with what fall leaves we had left. I wasn't able to get exactly what I wanted as there were a lot of people everywhere and certain areas of the park for some reason were not open, even when they were supposed to be, but I still made it work. We wrapped up in Central Park and ran straight down to Pier 34 along the Hudson River to get the last couple of shots needed to finish up the film. And now we can get into post-production and the part that I think took the longest to put together, the sound design. Okay, before getting into this, if you work on DaVinci Resolve like I do, you 100% want to have this setting turned on to protect your projects from corruptions like I was luckily able to do. First, you want to go into DaVinci Resolve's Preferences page. Go to User and Project Save and Load. You want to make sure project backups are checked, and honestly you can just copy these settings so you can get the most protection on your work. So now if your project gets corrupted, you have a chance to go back to a previous version and recover it. Now to start in post-production. I first colored and picked out all the best clips I knew I wanted to use in the film. I organized the intro clips I wanted and knew at this point I'd have to start a bit of the sound design. So first I had to pick out the music so I could edit with it and get the pacing right for the film. Right now I currently use Epidemic Sound for my sound effects and music. Sometimes I already know the music I'm going to use for my project, but not this time. I made sure to download them in stems so I could customize each part of the song to my liking and use parts I preferred instead of the full song, as you can see here. For some sound effects I did use Epidemic Sound, but I also made sure to record my own for those that I think would be difficult or impossible to find online. For example, her running. On the final day of shooting in Central Park, I made sure to record the audio of her feet running in different settings. I told Joyce to run in place and I recorded her footstep audio. I also recorded her watch to get the beep that it makes, and her breathing so I could throw that in when necessary. Even her tying her shoelaces, I re-recorded it myself so it was more clear in the video. For all the ambiances of the parks and the cities, the birds chirping and the park wind, I got all of those from Epidemic. Having the music figured out, I was able to outline the visuals of the whole video from beginning to end and start implementing the sound design. First without her dialogue to figure out where it should go, and then turning the voiceover back on to balance it out so you can hear everything. I went through music changes and rearrangements, but I think I got the vibe that I wanted through the pieces I picked. For sound design, I just wanted it to feel as natural as possible, making sure that when you watch, nothing sticks out to you and it makes sense to what you see. When she's taking out her earbuds, I make the music sound like it's coming from her earbuds, so it sounds different as she's removing them.
Basically, I have all the reasons to stay in bed and just not go for a run.
I did that by using these equalizer settings and increasing the volume a bit, as these settings made it quieter than I'd like it to be. The rest of the sound design was finding a balance between her dialogue and everything else, and I just kept making adjustments until I was happy with it. You also want to make sure for your films that the sound design is balanced for headphone users and for those that won't be wearing them. But if you do want to hear the full sound design in my short film, I definitely recommend wearing headphones. And for post-production, that's pretty much all I did, as I just kept fine-tuning things until I was happy with the final video. If you haven't seen the short film yet, or you want to rewatch it, make sure to check it out on my channel. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to show your support by leaving a like and commenting down below, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'll see you in the next one. Did it? Finally done?
Finally,
Wrapped up the shoot.
very efficient.
That's
Thank
pretty
you,
much
Dylan.
it. Thank you. This is all because of Joyce that we were able to do this. Alright. Hopefully the video turned out good. We'll see in the edit. Alright.